Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network present the Discover Your Mission series.
Now, I had been brought up without any prayer, without Bible, without church, nothing of that kind. And so when my father died, I became suicidally depressed. I had no desire to live. And yet, by the grace of God, whenever I got to the point of actually taking my life, I always had this interior conviction that if I took my life, I would simply find it again on the other side, and it would be permanent misery.
But it wasn't until I became a wife and a mother, and I began to try and pass my faith on to my children, that I realized that everything I knew about Jesus was memorized doctrine.
I was a good man, I was a good father, I was instilling the sacraments into my family. I was definitely not intentional. I was stuck broke with my faith.
But what kind of strength did he have? Jackie did not just have a strength of body or baseball skill. He had a strength inside of his spirit, a courageous meekness that empowered him to play the game.
And I tell him what is going on with me, and he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, no, I think this is like some sort of miracle, dude. And he's like, okay, of course, but I'll believe it when I see it. Honey, you've been trying to quit, and you've been saying this and saying that, and I'm, his big line to me is, you shouldn't say things, because I never follow through on them. And so this was week after week, month after month. He is looking at me like, this is a miracle. There is no way that you, on your own, could have done this.
So we are called to sing. All of us are called to sing. All of us are called to express ourselves and join our voice into the unity of the church. Often with my choirs, I ask them to listen to each other, to listen to the sound that they make together as one. That's what we're aiming for. Through the harmony or unison, we're aiming for a one sound.
You need to decide, what are you going to participate in? Are you going to participate in the historic Christian idea of the altar of sacrifice, which is in the Eucharist, or not?
Welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. This is a show all about implanting hope in our hearts. I'm Bill Snyder, joined by my friend Ann DeSantis. We're glad you're here for our uplifting conversation about faith and how it sustains our hearts through all the seasons of life. Thanks for walking with us. And good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. I am Bill Snyder. This is Sowing Hope, and as always, I am joined by my friend Ann DeSantis. It's another wonderful morning here in Wisconsin anyway. It's a little cold and foggy, but no matter, we are still pressing on here through the fog and bringing you a great show. So good morning, Ann, and how are you this morning? As she unmutes, there we are.
I am amazing today. Good to be here.
Very good, Ann, very good. And I know we have a wonderful guest with us as well, so why don't you talk to us about our great guest?
I will. And we have with us John Watchorn. He is from Pennsylvania, as I am too, and he is 25-year-old cradle Catholic, grew up in Frenchtown, New Jersey. He was homeschooled his entire life with his 4 other siblings and went to college for theology at DeSales University in Allentown, PA, and graduated in May of 2017. Since then, he's worked as a youth minister at two Catholic parishes, one in Southern Virginia and another in Central New Jersey. And he is currently working as an agent for New York Life. Welcome, John. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you guys so much for having me. It's a great pleasure.
Yeah, great stuff.
It really is. And my daughter Elaine says hello, of course, because you know her from DeSales University. That's a commonality there. And another commonality is that you were homeschooled, as she was too. And I know that when you go off to college, there's only a small percentage of students that actually experience what you did as a person who homeschooled all the way through, just as my daughters did too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always interesting having conversations with people who have that, you know, shared experience. You know, because it's kind of interesting whenever you talk with people who weren't homeschooled, you know, in college and stuff, and they'll always ask you stuff like, you know, was it a shock coming into college, like out of, you know, being homeschooled and everything? And then, you know, I kind of get tired of answering the question with like, no, not really, you know. but you know, when you have like those homeschooled, you know, those other homeschool people who have that experience, it's kind of nice just to like, you know, just, you know, share that bond. You know, because obviously there is a difference going into college after being homeschooled, but you know, it's not as shocking as I feel a lot of people think it would be.
Yeah, that's right. I know that what you just said, Elaine probably echoed the same exact thing when she went off to college. And she loved DeSales, and I think you did too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she graduated in 2019. And so now I also noticed from your bio that you got involved in Catholic ministry. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I'll kind of start a little bit before I went into college and stuff. So, you know, like you said, I was a cradle Catholic my whole life. You know, born and raised Catholic by an Irish Polish mother. And so, you know, strong Catholic roots there. And my dad was a convert when he was younger, so he you know, had very strong, you know, Catholic ties because of his conversion and everything. But I guess, you know, growing up, I kind of like felt that I was called to serve in the church somehow, and I didn't know how. Initially, I was very seriously thinking about priesthood when I was younger. You know, and talked with my pastor about it a lot. Visited a couple of seminaries, like in my senior year of high school and stuff. But you know, I kind of discerned out of that, and you know, just knew that I had to find some way to serve the church, though. So I knew that I was going to go to school for theology, but you know, initially I didn't realize what I was going to, you know, use it for. So I was kind of just like at DeSales for a while, just doing my theology degree, not really like knowing what I was going to use it for. And then like a couple years into it, one of the priests on campus actually asked me to help form a praise and worship group, because I played guitar a little bit, and I loved, you know, singing praise and worship. And so I formed it together with a couple of other students, and we just, you know, met once a week to practice, and then like had, you know, praise and worship once a month in the chapel at DeSales. And while we were doing that, one of my other friends who like came to one of our praise and worship nights was saying, you know, I could really see you going into youth ministry, and that's kind of what got me thinking about it. You know, because not only like what my friend said, but also like I heard a bunch of other people saying like, you know, oh yeah, I'm gonna go on to teach theology and philosophy in college and stuff. And I guess to me, I kind of felt like, well, what about the high school kids? Like, I feel like they kind of end up getting left behind almost. You know, and I get it, you know, it's important to be teaching theology and philosophy in college, and that's awesome. Like, some people have that calling, and I respect them greatly for that. But for me, I felt, you know, high school is such an important formative time, and, you know, so many high school kids have those, you know, major questions about the faith and feel like, you know, that they can't really get good answers, I guess. And I feel like they kind of end up being left behind because of that. You know, and I felt that I was called to really, you know, work with that age group because, you know, I love, you know, kind of like just acting like, I guess, an older brother almost in the faith to, like, you know, the younger people. And so I guess that's kind of what brought me into the idea of ministry. And ever since then, I've just kind of loved being involved as a youth minister, and now, you know, no longer being a youth minister, just kind of like assisting at my parish in any way that I can, you know, in helping youth ministry to grow and flourish and develop.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm sure you bring, you know, your perspective too to a lot of students. You know, I mean, like the homeschooling perspective, and even the financial advisor perspective to your, you know, students that you're helping. You know, youth ministry is, you know, as you said, just so important, and it's a formative time for high school students that they're probably pretty open to listening to your unique journey, right? I mean, I think that's part of so much of high school youth ministry is sharing with young people, you know, high school age people, that, you know, their story and their journey and their walk with the Lord matters. And you know, you can do anything. And so maybe just share with us a little bit about, you know, I mean, how did you get into the financial advisor stuff? I mean, was it something that you wanted to do? I mean, it's, you know, something that was like, oh my gosh, you know, I feel God calling me to do this. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I guess I kind of like first started looking at it back in when was this, towards the end of 2019, I guess it was. It feels so much longer ago because of what's happened in 2020, but
Yeah.
but I'm sure everyone can understand that feeling. But yeah, so like I guess back in like towards the end of 2019, well, I'll have to backtrack a little bit more, sorry, but so early 2019, I started dating my my current girlfriend, Mary, and we kind of like knew right away that we wanted to get married. You know, and we were like talking about it, and we came to, you know, the conclusion of, you know, if we want to get married and want to raise a family, you know, I can't just stay on a youth minister's salary, unfortunately, because, you know, we wanted to kind of like both have, you know, similar desires for raising our families. Like we were both homeschooled growing up. You know, both of our moms were stay-at-home moms, and, you know, we both kind of like wanted that for our kids in the future. And so, you know, realizing that I would have to, you know, get a different job that would allow for, you know, a higher income than, you know, like 30,000 a year, which is what I was making on youth ministry. You know, we started looking at different possibilities, and, you know, we threw around the idea of me going back to school, but we were like, I don't know if that's smart, you know, trying to end up getting into more debt in order to try and, you know, figure out our problem didn't exactly seem like the most appealing solution. So we kind of just like started looking for jobs that, you know, had decent income potential, but I wouldn't have to go back to school for. And, you know, life insurance kind of came up because I obviously have this, you know, this desire still to help people. And life insurance seemed like kind of a good, compromise isn't the right word, but like kind of like a good happy medium between, you know, ministry almost, and, you know, just having something where I could get, you know, more income. And so I started looking into it, because, you know, the idea of helping people to have, like, you know, peace of mind is, you know, huge. And so I guess I started looking towards the end of 2019, didn't find anything in life insurance. So I just kind of like stuck with what I was doing for a while. And then COVID hit, so everything kind of just like went down in terms of my search. But like during COVID, I found New York Life, the company that I'm working with now. And I was just reading up on them and like learning about them, and they just seemed like such a good fit, and like, you know, just a way by which I could help people to be financially safe and to take care of their families, and just a good opportunity. And so I started doing the application process and everything. Got a call, had like 2 or 3 interviews over the phone. They ended up taking me on, but because COVID had everything shut down, I had basically a 4-month period where I was studying for my life insurance exam, but I wasn't able to take it because the testing centers were shut down. So it wasn't really until like September of 2020, the end of September, that I actually started working with them, and I absolutely love it because the people that I talk with, the opportunities that I have to just get to know them and get to know their families, and just assist them in any way that I can. And I guess like there's a Bible passage that I actually think of in terms of discussing life insurance with people. It's the one parable that Jesus gives in the Gospel of Luke when he talks about the rich man who had a good harvest from his land and like decided that he was going to build up bigger barns so that he could store his harvest. And then God says to him, basically, you fool, you're going to die tonight. And then, he passes away with like all that just kind of in his wake. And I guess the one thing that I kept thinking about when I read that passage in light of, like what I'm doing now is like, well, did the man have, a family? Did he have, a wife and children who are now like just kind of like destitute because of his foolishness? So I guess I started thinking about, how we have kind of a duty to our family, not only in our current life, but also when we pass on. If we want to really take care of our families and make sure that they're not struggling, then we really have to kind of take it seriously and like look at the different options in how we can provide for them even from beyond the grave, I guess. So
Yeah, what a great story, and what a great outlook. I think a lot of young people in college, high school, I hope will listen to this episode because what you've just shared with us, I think, is really, really insightful for them, and really well balanced. I think when you start discerning with somebody that you want to spend a future with, and you look at how that's going to happen and what you're going to do, and figure out the plan of how to get there with the Lord in it is a huge leg up on the rest of the world. I think a lot of young people just drift. They're tied to their smartphones. They're laughing at funny videos on YouTube, and they're not really invested in the planning of their future and what that looks like. And so I just really commend you for all of the great work that you have put into discerning that, because it's a discernment process. And
Absolutely.
and the Lord really led you through that discernment process. And that's a beautiful thing to recognize and look at. And I'm sure your clients that you have through New York Life, you're even bringing the gospel into that. And are you bringing it, outright? Like, you're probably not evangelizing, people over the phone as you're talking to them, but the reality is you're bringing the Lord into that situation with that in the back of your mind, like, okay, I want to help people not be foolish. I want to help people have that financial security. I want to help families grow so that they're not struggling and that they're not destitute. And that's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful mission to recognize that and know that, this is such a great example of the Lord working in powerful ways through just ordinary circumstances, and that is so commendable for you. So thank you for sharing the story.
Oh, for sure. Thank you. Yeah, I guess like one of the one of the other big things for me now, is that I'm excited for is the fact that like this year is, the year of St. Joseph. And, it's just exciting thinking like, okay, well, I'm just like basically starting this new career with, St. Joseph, the patron of workers and, of men, just kind of watching my back, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love your story. And I think what's speaking into my heart is that your intentions are so good with what you are doing. And, it means a lot when we're talking about people's livelihoods, finances, insurance, anything like that. When the person that you're dealing with has good intentions and when you tell that story about the Lord and about the rich young man, I mean, that says a lot about what's really important about life, about the future, and about taking care of the people that we care about. So I just want to thank you as well. So take us on a journey then from the time of, say, last year up until now. As you said, it's been a little different, right, this past year, and kind of what you're doing right now and what your visions are for the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess, last year, let's think. I guess kind of the major thing, that was going on with me, like kind of at the start of last year, like I said, I was kind of looking around for new work, ideally, working in life insurance and stuff. And I guess, the one realization that I really came to in the first couple months of 2020 was that the realization that, in thinking about marriage and in trying to like start preparing myself for, working towards marriage, the major, I guess if I were to just boil it down into one word, it would just be sacrifice. Like that's the biggest thing is that, I didn't necessarily want to start looking for a new job. I was comfortable in youth ministry and I really enjoyed doing what I was doing. But I knew that if I was going to have a future, with my girlfriend and, look at raising a family with her, then I would have to, be willing to sacrifice what I would prefer to do in favor of what I had to do, I guess. Because, just kind of thinking about, the daily grind of, something that wasn't, youth ministry, that I wasn't, as, super initially like super passionate about, it was kind of a daunting thought. But I guess that's what really helped me to grow a lot, I guess, is realizing that it was sacrifice, and I had to be willing to sacrifice, for the good of my future family, my future wife. I guess I started thinking about, the in the Bible, I forget the exact passage, but I think it's from Corinthians when Paul says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loves the church. And that's kind of a passage that I've really taken to heart, because in order for, husbands to love their wives as Christ loves the church, that means that we have to, as men, be willing to sacrifice and, just basically give up our lives for the good of, our bride. And that's something that I feel like isn't pushed enough in the world today. That's why we have, in my opinion, so many broken marriages. We have so few men who are willing to really live that out. And I think that, it, like I said, that's kind of the major thing that I was thinking about in the start of, 2020, just, sacrificing, getting my life in order, in order, in the correct order, I guess, like focusing on God first and focusing on, sacrificing in order to, bring about, in order to, have a good future with, my wife and my children in the future. And I guess I started looking especially to the example of St. Joseph. One of the things that I hate is how like people tend to think of like St. Joseph as just like kind of this elderly man who's like kind of just like, he builds chairs, and like that's about it. Like I guess the I forget who I heard this from, but the more proper understanding of Saint Joseph, like the Greek word that's used to describe him isn't like, doesn't directly translate to carpenter. It's more like the actual word is tekton, which is like, basically like a carpenter, a construction worker, a bricklayer. He would cut down his own trees and like carry them to like his shop to work on them. It's like a very, more, I guess, like masculine idea of Saint Joseph, than like is kind of shown or put forward, really. Like he's I definitely believe that he was a lot younger than most people think, because it doesn't make sense for God to put this frail elderly man in charge of his son and the Blessed Mother, to protect them. So I guess I started thinking about my life in light of Saint Joseph, thinking of how can I just kind of plug away at work and sacrifice myself in order to help our family. And I guess like a big like struggle obviously was when COVID hit and like everything got shut down. It was kind of like I had all these plans for like building up my finances, getting to a good spot where I'd be able to get married and raise a family. And then all this happened, and it was kind of like, okay, basically like half of America on unemployment and stuff, and it was ridiculous. And so I was like just kind of getting close to falling into despair for a little bit, like kind of earlier on in 2020. But I just kept praying and knowing that God had a reason for all this, and that he wanted me to just trust in him more, and he was using this as an opportunity for me to grow and to just trust in him. And I definitely think that throughout 2020 my spiritual life has grown a lot. Both me and my girlfriend, we've like prayed, talk more about our spiritual lives and where we want to be as a couple, leading up to when we eventually do get married, and just like talking about different aspects of our relationship and diving more deeply into it, both individually and as a couple. And I think that God has really blessed me in throughout 2020 in just like helping me to grow beyond what I thought my limitations were. It's just through sacrifice we can grow so much more than I think we realize, or we can grow so much more than the world would want us to believe. And I guess like another, in terms of my actual work with New York Life, I guess one thing that I've kind of like tied into my like the spiritual side of my life as well is as a life insurance agent, the grind can be really difficult sometimes. Like it can be hard to get up in the morning, go about your day calling people, getting about 100 no's for like 2 yeses. But that's the thing too, is that like the way that I kind of like tie it into my spiritual life is like just the virtue of perseverance. Like you need perseverance in order to be good at life insurance sales, and you also need perseverance just in your daily life. And I started listening to I forget what his name is, but he's someone from Decided Excellence Catholic Media, who I think was on your guys' show before. And they talk about how in sales you need to basically have a virtuous life in order to be successful. Yeah. Which I absolutely love, because it's so true. Like I've noticed that the days that I'm the most successful as a life insurance agent are the days where I like take my prayer life and my spiritual life a bit more seriously, which is just awesome, because it helps me to realize that how interconnected everything is to our spiritual life. Like I think everything, including our finances and just personal situations, are so much more deeply connected to our spiritual life than people would ever imagine. Yeah, sorry. I guess if I was rambling on a little bit there, that's kind of like where I am, right now with everything.
No, it's great.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and I think it draws a picture of you and your heart. Our hearts are so important, and why our motivations and why we do things. And I think when people decide to work with someone like yourself, and as you said, our finances are an important part of the future and in protecting our families, right? And when somebody trusts you enough for your advice, for your help, that says a lot about you. And I think that based on knowing you, based on what you're telling us, I mean, I think that you are the perfect person for people to come to with those questions. So tell us, somebody might be listening right now and thinking, I would like to speak to him about things. I would like to talk about how I can organize my future better regarding insurance, regarding money. So what would be some of those initial steps that you would have to take with them?
I guess initially, I mean, in terms of like, talking with them one-on-one and stuff, I guess initially what I'd be telling them is, if the person's married, be like, look, your wife and kids, they're dependent on you. They rely on you to help them to live, comfortably. Like what would happen to them if you, God forbid, were to just, walk down the street and get hit by a bus or something, like you don't want, one of the quotes that New York Life uses, which is my favorite quote that we use, is love takes action, which I love. One of our commercials that we have kind of like goes through the 4 different types of love that the Greeks would talk about, and in saying that love takes action, we need to realize that part of our actions that we have that we do now are going to reverberate, for years to come in ways that we might not even realize. So in order to fully, love our families, we need to do whatever we can to provide for them, not only now, but into the future. So, I guess in terms of like, talking about just their financial goals and financial well-being is like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Where do you see your family in 5 years? Where do you see your family in 10 years? Like just ask them, what is your goal for, your family? What is your goal for their well-being? Do you have, expenses that you need to have taken care of in the event of your death? We don't want to leave our family, suffering financially when we eventually die. Like they're already going to be suffering, emotionally from our loss. So we don't want to like make things more burdensome on them when we eventually die. But I guess also the thing is that, we don't want to make it so that they have to, struggle immediately after we're gone and stuff. Like we want to make sure they're taken care of at least for a little while. And I guess the other thing too is that like, I'm not going to go down the route of, preaching the prosperity gospel or anything. But God does want us to be, safe. He wants us to be happy. And like, obviously I'm not going to say that, God has the same plan for every single person, like in terms of like their financial journey or anything. But I will say that I do believe that, God gives us a responsibility with, not only with our families, but also with our financial goods. I think of, the parable of the talents, like what God gives us, he entrusts to us, and he, we're meant to use what is given to us in this life to bring about his greater glory. And one of the things that I keep thinking about is, how, we want, like for me personally, one of my financial dreams is to be able to, like, eventually be well enough off financially that I can end up making or founding like some sort of, organization to aid, people who have been caught up in human trafficking, aid survivors of that. Like that's a dream for me and a goal for me. And I guess like that's something that I think about, is that if I end up getting to the point financially where I'm able to do that and I don't do it, then I've squandered my, my time on earth that God has entrusted to me. And, that's something that I guess to wrap up this rambling answer to your question, I would just say, what, financial, what has God blessed you with financially, and how do you want to grow that, and how do you want to use that in order to bring about, his honor and glory in this world?
Yeah, that's a good answer. And I don't think it was long and drawn out, because as you were talking, I was really thinking about what you were saying, and I'm sure that others are too. And I really do wish you the best with those dreams that you have, because I know that your dreams are not just about you. I mean, and they're not just about even your family. It sounds like you have a dream to really do the mission that God has for you for others. And as you said, with this goal to try and help those affected by human trafficking. So I think that's a wonderful thing, and definitely will keep you in my prayers. And you talked about that at a young age. I mean, you've always been a person of faith, and I think you're a very good example to younger people too. And sometimes when we're thinking about the future and our goals, including the fact that, yes, we need to be good stewards. Isn't that so important? Would you have any words of advice to college age or people that are younger than you about thinking about things like, maybe I really should start thinking about being a better steward of the gifts that God has given me, namely, the income that we're bringing in and how we are taking care of not only ourselves, but others.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess one of the major things, and hopefully this doesn't come across as a knock to any other, Catholics or Christians who have this mentality, but one thing that I've noticed is a fairly kind of rampant mentality for a lot of, young Catholics and young Christians, is this idea of, oh, well, if we're going to struggle financially, it'll be fine. God will take care of us. And it's true, God does provide. But at the same time, because of the fact that he has made us stewards of this earth, he has also given us the responsibility to also, work to provide for things for ourselves. But the thing is, too, is that, like, it's not just a responsibility, but it's also a real honor and privilege when you, like, sit down and think about it. Because, there's this term, I forget where, like, I first heard it, but a similar term was used by Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings. He said that God allows us to be co-creators with him, which is amazing. And financially, that applies as well. Like God doesn't just, plop us down in this world and give us, like all the finances that, we could ever need. He's kind of just like, okay, here you are. Here's what I want you to do. Work with it. And I think that's so beautiful because, he allows us to work alongside him in bringing about his plans for the world. I guess the one quote that I always think of, I've heard, I forget who exactly it came from, because I've heard people say St. Augustine, I've heard people say St. Ignatius, but either way, I'm just going to say the quote, and whoever gets the credit, sorry about that, but it's this quote that goes, work as if everything depends upon you, and pray as if everything depends upon God. And ever since I've heard that quote, I've kind of tried to take it to heart, because it's very true. Like, we can pray all we want, and, we can just be on our knees 24/7. But if we don't get up and do the work that God has set forward for us to do, then it's a waste of time. It's just essentially paying God lip service. If we're praying to Him but not acting upon those prayers, then what are we doing? Essentially, is what I think of in terms of just the modern idea of how Christians and Catholics generally tend to approach finances. And I guess if I were to say like there was any one or two major things that I would just suggest to people like either my age or a little bit younger in terms of like both their spiritual life and their financial life, I would say that exact quote: praise if everything depends upon God and work as if everything depends upon you. Like don't give up. Don't. I know it's so much easier to just kind of like sit back and be like, well, everything's gonna work out somehow. Like that's not what we're supposed to do. Like we're supposed to work and bring about God's glory.
Yeah.
Through whatever means He's called us to do it.
Yeah. No, you're so spot on, John. And as we kind of reach the end of the episode, I want to ask you, if there are people out there listening to this, and we do have quite a few with us live, and I know we'll have quite a few with us on demand. How can people get in touch with you? Are you allowed to share with us how people can get in touch with you as an agent, so that people that are listening to this might be able to use you, support you, and also as a good Catholic, just be able to relate to you in their journey to secure their families financially.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm more than happy to give people my email address. It is, sorry, give me 1 second. My work one that I don't know off the top of my head yet. Give me just 1 second. Sorry.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, so like I have my work email that I'm just pulling up now, and it is J Watchorn, so JWATCHORN at ft.newyorklife.com. And on top of that, I also have a Facebook page that I actually just started recently for my my New York Life work, and the name of that one is just John Watchorn, New York Life Agent. And I post on there, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, try and keep people updated on what's going on, and like just have articles on different financial stuff. But yeah, I mean, other than that, that's yeah. I mean, if people want to reach out to me, I'm more than happy to talk to them, whether it's about finances, spiritual life, whatever. Like I'm all ears.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm really excited about your story. I'm excited about your mission. I think you're just going to do great things. So I really appreciate it. And giving people hope. Amidst the pandemic, I mean, you're sowing a lot of hope, and that's what we do here. Giving people hope for their future, ensuring that there isn't going to be a disaster amongst their families. I mean, this is what you're doing, and so just thank you so much for really sharing with us your story, your mission, and your calling, because it's such a great story. And I hope a lot of people do reach out to you. I hope a lot of people get in touch with you, just to talk about how they can best plan their futures, because it is an important thing to think about. It is important for Catholics to think about that, and so thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, and really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to say the same thing. Really, John, you were a very good guest. So thank you for sharing your story. And I really do wish you all the best, and hope that you can come back to Sowing Hope sometime.
Oh, that would be awesome. I've really enjoyed sitting here and talking with you guys.
Awesome stuff. Well, folks, we thank you for tuning in to us this morning, and keep all of our guests in mind as you scroll through the archives and their great work that they do. But until next time, from all of us at Patchwork Heart Ministry, the Fiat Ministry Network, and St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation, I'm Bill Snyder. Keep beating to your Catholic heart and sowing hope into broken hearts. Thanks for listening to this episode of Sowing Hope on Patchwork Heart Radio. For more information about this podcast and our ministries, visit our websites, patchworkheart.org and andesantis.com. You can also follow and interact with us on Twitter at PWH Ministry or Andy Santis 2.